Alrighty, you ready to continue our notes? Remember, we're in Chapter 18, World War II. Today we're going to talk about the theaters of conflict. In other words, the areas of conflict. Theater is just a fancy word for the different areas. The first one was Western Europe. In the spring of 1940, Germany invaded Denmark and Norway. Hitler especially wanted to prevent the Allies from developing military bases here. The Germans attacked the Netherlands and Belgium. The British and French responded by rushing troops into Belgium to stop the Germans. The German forces, though, knew about this, and they quickly outmaneuvered them and slipped past them south of Belgium. Within just 1 month, the Allied army found itself trapped near the English Channel on the beaches of Dunkirk. Now, this is a movie that was just made recently called Dunkirk. Hitler decided to allow his German Air Force, called the Luftwaffe, to wipe out the entire Allied force. There were 350,000 men. But he didn't plan on was the weather, though. There was really thick fog and clouds, and it made it impossible for the Luftwaffe, the Air Force, to attack. They couldn't see their targets. So there wasn't any soldiers, military ships that could rescue these people. So the British citizens, that's just regular people like us, ferried these allies, these trapped allies, across the English Channel to safety. And that's really what the whole movie's about. Well, France quickly fell to Germany also. And Germany put up they called these puppet leaders. They were French leaders, but they were really just loyal to the Nazi party. So the Germany quickly put up these French leaders that were just puppets who were going to carry out their interest. Then Hitler began to bomb Britain with his Air Force, the Luftwaffe. And he wasn't very specific on his targets. He was very specific. He wanted them to bomb not only military bases, but also private citizens like homes and bakeries and places of business. And this did tremendous damage there in London. The next theater of conflict, our area, was Eastern Europe. Russia, while this is all going on, takes advantage of what's going on over in Western Europe and decides they want to invade Poland from the other side. And they quickly move into Poland. They actually capture Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia all at the same time. Moving over to Soviet Union, this is the third area. In 1940, Germany decides to invade Russia, Soviet Union, this vast country, because of the natural resources and some other things that he would like to take advantage of. The attack began in June. With 3 million Nazi troops rushing into Russia along this 1,800-mile front. So they were all spread out over 1,800 miles. The Germans quickly captured thousands of Russian prisoners and seized 500,000 square miles of Russian territory. But the Germans could not achieve victory because quickly summer turned into winter. And it says that the temperatures dropped to 40 degrees below zero. Of course, the German troops weren't built for this. They weren't prepared for this. Even their equipment couldn't run in this extreme cold weather. So gradually the Russian forces were wore down the Russian forces wore down the German army. And in February of 1943, Germany surrendered in Russia. Now, the next area we're going to talk about, the fourth area of conflict, was in northern Africa. This is the one that a lot of people overlook. Italy saw what was going on with Germany, so they quickly ran into northern Africa also, because Germany is now sort of distracted over in Europe. And Italy thought, well, if Germany can grab some of northern Africa, we should too. It didn't work out too well for them. British really quickly expelled the Italians from Egypt and captured over 100,000 Italian troops. Hitler saw this going on with their ally, which was the Italians, and responded by sending General Erwin Rommel. Rommel is a very famous German general. They sent him over in the spring of 1941 into northern Africa with some really highly trained, almost like special forces German troops to rescue the Italians. Rommel he advanced into Egypt and nearly defeated the British. If it wasn't for the British general Bernard Montgomery, the Germans would have won. But eventually, the British were able to drive out the Germans and gain control back of Egypt. Now, the last area of conflict is the Pacific. This is where General MacArthur comes in. Following the attack of Pearl Harbor, the Japanese really wanted to seize islands throughout the Pacific. They thought this was the open door for them. President Roosevelt ordered Douglas to leave the Philippines, so that everyone thought this was sort of like a retreat. But he had something else in mind for him. The Japanese treated any soldiers that they captured in the Philippines really, really terrible. They tortured them, and the president didn't want MacArthur to get caught, so he tells him to retreat. But then he makes him the supreme Allied commander in the whole Pacific theater, and the Allies gradually, under MacArthur's leadership, begin to gain victory after victory after victory over the Japanese, and the American forces found out a secret plan of the Japanese. The Japanese were going to attack this island called Midway, and the Americans found out. And because they had an important naval base there, the Japanese wanted to attack it. And American pilots sunk several Japanese aircraft carriers in this battle and forced the Japanese to retreat. The American forces had started advancing towards Japan, island by island, capturing important islands, capturing prisoners, and eventually the Allies would use all of these islands for their bases and gain territory. So the shift starts to move in the Allies' favor under General MacArthur. That wraps up our notes for today. Go back, do the matching, and I'll see you at the end of the lesson.